to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina, episode 152. So we are climbing. Joining me tonight is my brother, Robbie Rip Rains, and we'll have an Anthony and a Doc sighting here shortly. They're both just running late. So how y'all doing tonight? Hope everybody's ready for a good time. We're going to have a hell of a good show tonight. Before we get started, I want to say a quick bit though. Folks, remember to keep Miss Lene in your prayers. She's still struggling with some health issues, and we want her to get better. And Tombstone won't be here tonight. He's having some family issues that I don't want to go into. It's not really my place to say, but just keep him and his wife and his family in your thoughts and prayers. They've got some stuff going on that kind of a hard time for them right now. So just keep those in mind, and say an extra prayer for those folks tonight. And with that thought in mind, we will jump right into this. Robbie, how the hell are you doing tonight, brother?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm good. So what do you got coming up for us here soon on What If It's True?
Well, Tyler he was having some trouble with technical stuff because we just switched over to us completely recording everything instead of our benefactor, so to speak, that was helping us out to start. And we've had the little, the growing pains, technical issues, and things like that. So Tyler's still trying to figure out all our equipment and things like that. So we're probably about 4 or 5 shows in a hole. But we've got an episode about the Wampus Cat coming out. We've got these are supposed to be some Christmas episodes. We got a Krampus episode coming out. We got an episode about elves. We just released the last one we released was the types of Bigfoot, which was a pretty good show. Which you were kind enough to give us all the information on that one. Yep, it was a very informative show.
Make sure you share your link in the chat.
Yeah, see if it's. Tombstone usually puts that on there, so I don't usually have to worry about it. But
Tomb's not here tonight, unfortunately.
Tombstone's not here tonight, and I don't know if Meg knows where or not, so I'll see if I can find it. But I think we got an episode coming out on the Black Knight satellite, and
don't worry, you shouldn't say it by name.
Well, sorry, but that big thing in the sky, and the not Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith people, to not say them by name.
Unless they show up at the door.
Yeah, we've got some good shows coming up. Just some, but we kind of been in the hole on getting them out there. So I've got enough shows lined up to where I can, which is good because I can't record next week because I'm going to be on the Nona Boss Continuum on the day we normally record. I'll be doing a show with her on tracking. So if you want to come over and watch that, hopefully I'll be able to live up to all the hype she was hyping on me last night. So we'll see.
It's going to be a good show. I'm looking forward to watching that one.
Yeah, you know me. I love to blabber about tracking. So
it's a good subject. We need to do a show on it ourselves.
Yeah,
kind of a breakdown. How tracks work, how it's not as impossible as people think to double back on tracks and things like that.
There it is. I found it.
Awesome. You got it posted?
Yeah, it's scrolling on the banner on the bottom. That's
Northwood says that satellite should be referred to as the remains of the Galactica. Good Battlestar Galactica reference. I like that. Yeah. That is awesome. Well, folks, tonight we are going to be talking about a subject that I find very fascinating and at the same time very terrifying. And I wouldn't even really call it a cryptid. It's more supernatural. What they refer to as the Skinwalker, or the Navajo refer to as the Yinatalushi. The Skinwalker is one of those that if you're of a praying sort, before we get too far into this show, you might want to say a quick one because just mentioning its name, according to the Navajo, can bring its attention down on you. I'm not real worried about it because we've kind of got some blessings in place around the house for just such an emergency, because I'm pretty convinced I brought something home with me from LBL, and we had to chase it away. So just to make sure that didn't happen again, I had a friend take care of a few things for me. But that's another story in and of itself. But the belief that the Skinwalker gains power by you talking about it is held true throughout most of the desert tribes. In fact, it's not just the Navajo that have legends of a Skinwalker type creature. Although other tribes like the Ute, the Apache, and the Pueblo all have their own version of the Skinwalker, it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, you see a lot of shows and a lot of movies that kind of they almost make Skinwalker synonymous with werewolves. There's what's that movie, Skinwalkers, which is specifically about werewolves. Yeah, people really don't realize how dark and how deep the Skinwalker goes versus just being a dogman or a werewolf. Or yeah, it could be that form, but it could be anything.
Yeah,
not just a werewolf.
Yeah, Skinwalkers can take the form of literally anything, including other people. The Navajo believe that if you look one in the eye, it can steal your face, or it can actually possess you and corrupt you and make you do things you wouldn't normally do. Um, the Skinwalker is one of those ones that really gives me the heebie-jeebies, not because of its not because of it being a cryptid or anything like that, but because they can go anywhere, take any form, do anything, and they are about as close to pure evil as you're ever gonna encounter.
Yeah.
Um,
What was you remember that movie with Denzel Walker or Denzel Washington? I mean, the where he was fighting the spirit that did that.
oh yeah, I can't remember the name of that movie.
I can't remember either, but that was almost. It didn't. I don't think it took the form of any animals, but it would. You never knew who it was going to be,
right?
Or who if he was. It was pretty slick how he beat it in the end of the movie, but that's well, like you're saying, just never knowing the fallen. Yep, that's it. Thank you, Horror Chronicles. That was
a good movie.
Yeah, it was, but just never knowing who or what this thing's going to be the next time you look at it. The First Power was another one that kind of delved a little bit into that, where he was other people. We were both kids, or fairly young when that movie came out. That was one of those movies that scared the ever loving what out of me.
Yeah. Well, the Skinwalker should scare people. They're terrifying. In order to become a Skinwalker, you've got to basically be a Navajo medicine man or a shaman, and then go as dark as you could possibly go. You've got to commit some heinous taboo crime like patricide, killing your father, killing one of your parents, killing a sibling. Necrophilia is another means, desecration of corpses, just basically anything that are such revolting taboo that you would be considered the absolute opposite of everything that a holy man of the Navajo represents. Just absolutely terrifying, the lengths they will go to gain power. What I was going to say? I was looking at something. Sorry, I'm getting messages on my other screen as I'm popping up. And they can take any form. Most commonly they show up as a coyote or a fox, or wolves, or even an eagle or an owl or a crow. But according to my friend who was born on the Navajo res, he said that they could even take the form of insects. Or other people. If you run into somebody you've known for a long time, and they thank you, William, appreciate it, brother. They can do pretty much any form. If you run into somebody that you have known for a very long time and they're acting completely out of character and their eyes just don't seem to be quite right, you might have run into a Skinwalker. Hey, General Dalton's popping in. What's up, man?
Good evening, gentlemen.
How's it going?
It's going.
Oh, just enjoying vacation.
Werewolf says my eyes are glowing.
Wouldn't surprise me. um, Another thing they talk about skinwalkers, they say that they can run incredibly fast and cover as much as 200 miles in a single evening. Uh, they again, a lot of times they'll take on the form of a bird if they need to fly very far or things like that. But they can take on literally any form. And they're also, there isn't just one at any given time. Supposedly there's an entire dark council of these type of creatures, these dark witches that initiate others into the fold. So we have no idea how many there are. They're very, very difficult to kill. Um, in fact, the only way I've ever read that is confirmed will kill one is if you know their true name, who they were before they became a skinwalker. There are ways to hurt them and push them away. Corn pollen around your property is supposed to keep them away. If you have to shoot one, dip the bullets in white ash, and you have to hit it in the head or the neck, and it will either kill it or drive it away. These things are just incredibly dangerous, incredibly powerful, and they're not something you want coming after you.
Bad juju.
Very much bad juju.
Well, it seems like there's quite a few things that have that stigma of you have to know who they were or what they truly were before you could, either subdue or kill them. What was it, Rumpelstiltskin? That you had to know his name, what his real name was before you could stop him. So that get all these things.
There was a lot about vampire lore about knowing their true name as well.
Yeah. So I just wonder if, like we say, all these folklore, legends, whatever you want to call them, no matter how different, how far away they are, you always can find some little string that, that can kind of tie, something from Europe in with something from the Americas, or something from China in with something to Australia. It's weird how all this stuff almost it's not localized. Go ahead,
everything, like you said, Robbie, has a similar theme. You just can't say everything's different. It's all interlinking.
Yeah,
it's kind of the general theme I've seen just watching the shows. Is like you said, what's in Europe translates to what was done in America to a certain point.
Yeah, and I most people are going to say, well, people from Europe settled in America, and that's why that, but that doesn't explain how all these things that we've seen have some kind of little grain that goes over here, or something that goes over here, or something that's the same over here, because
the practices were well documented before colonialization.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And the thing about the actual lore of the Skinwalker is we may never know all of it because the Navajo just don't share it with outsiders. What we know is what we have learned has been things that they've discussed and are willing to talk about, but they don't talk about their deep lore and things like that. So outsiders outside the reservation may never know for sure exactly what's going on.
Well, I think that's why you get the things like the movie Skinwalkers, which really has nothing to do with Skinwalkers.
They just used the name, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very good movie.
No, and like you and I were talking about before the show, Skinwalker Ranch, which really has nothing to do with true Skinwalkers either.
I might be pronouncing this incorrectly because I'm not a native Navajo speaker, but what they refer to as the Antini, practitioners of witchery, are people who have received supernatural power by breaking cultural taboo. Upon initiation of the Antini, a person is said to gain the power to become a Yinatalushi, which means with it he goes on all fours in the Navajo language. This is done via a dance song ceremony used to curse instead of heal. Although both men and women can become Antini, men are more commonly initiated. It's generally thought that only childless women can become witches. Not every witch is a skinwalker, but every skinwalker is a witch.
Deep stuff.
That would make sense, though.
William Nighthawk to say it takes more than smoking peyote to do the walk in another skin. Trust me, I know.
What would as DA was saying about the Navajo and their religion and all not having the knowledge, couldn't you say the same thing as disinformation from the Catholic Church for everything from
Oh yeah.
European lore to a
Oh yeah.
certain extent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think very much so. A lot of the lore that we should have known, like down from the time, centuries before. I think a lot of monster lore, like on Dogman, for example, because we know Dogman traces its origins back to the cynocephalus, which were reported by the Greeks and the Romans. I think a lot of knowledge that was learned, probably by the Templars, was destroyed.
well, and you can use that same. You mentioned the Catholic Church. You can use the um, same basis with them that you talk about with the Navajo. There's so much that are locked up in the archives in the Vatican that
We'll never know.
we'll never know, but would probably explain so much that we're sitting here talking about right now. There's probably answers to locked away in the Vatican that we'll never see.
I would love to have access to the
Oh
archives there.
God, yeah.
Now you
Another thing that the Navajo say, it says in some stories, people who have attained the highest rank are called Klizyati, which means pure evil. This can be achieved by killing a close blood relative, incest, necrophilia, or other culturally taboo evil acts. Upon completing one or more of these acts, it's said to destroy their humanity and allow them to become fully initiated in the way of witchery.
again, that still ties back to European and the Catholic Church's practices as well. That's all taboo stuff as well from
True.
the other side of the pond.
Eric
Now
Sobbs
you
asks, doesn't the origins of Skinwalkers originally come from the Ute tribes? The earliest we could find come from Navajo. There are a version of something that's very much like a Skinwalker in the Ute traditions, as well as the Apache and the Pueblo. A lot of the desert tribes have a very similar legend. And when you've got multiple tribes from that region that have a very similar legend, even though, despite the fact they call it something different, to me that lends credence that they were seeing something, that they were experiencing something, and they were trying to put a name to it. Kind of like how every tribe has a name for Bigfoot. I think Native American tribes have a much deeper understanding of things like this because it's an accepted part of the reality. It's not something that like most of us have had to have something paradigm shifting, like had to see a Bigfoot or heard something in the woods you couldn't explain for us to finally open our minds and accept that these things might be out there. A lot of people have had to have the entire paradigm shift of seeing one for themselves. Like Robbie, for example, when he saw his when he was a young man, he's had a lifelong belief in these things now. I was a very young man when I had my first experiences, and those things change us. It opens us up to the possibility that there's something bigger, something far more sinister lurking in the woods than we were ever taught to believe as youngsters. So it's definitely something that's tangible. There's a darkness in the world that hides just beyond the edge of the light, and for the most part, our society doesn't want to admit the possibility of them being out there.
Well, it's just kind of like when you compare us with Native American, that that with them you don't have to convince them that Bigfoot is real. They've lived with it. It's most of them have seen it multiple times in their life, and it's kind of like if you bring somebody from a third world country over here and they see the internet for the first time and they're mesmerized and amazed by them, and it just totally blows their mind, and we're just like, what? It's just the internet. I mean, because we're so used to it, we've had it for so long. It's the same thing. It's just when you're not used to something like that, and your mind does not know that something like that. You see the shows, you see the stories, and you hear all that stuff, but until you actually see something like that, and your mind just comes or gets rewired, rather, until you've had that experience, like you and I have had, DA, you look at stuff completely, totally different once something like that, like you said, the paradigm shift. Like once that happens, you can't go back to, you can't put things back in the box.
I think once you've seen something, be it a skinwalker, or a Bigfoot, or a Wendigo, or a dogman, or even a ghost, once your mind has accepted that's real, I saw that is real, you start seeing other things. You
Yeah.
start noticing more because your mind is no longer closed to it.
Well,
Things that you might have just brushed off as being a blur of movement out of the corner of your eye suddenly take on greater significance.
well,
Oh,
the obvious next question once you see something like that is, okay, if that's real, what's next? What else is real? And that just leads
Exactly.
you. That opens your mind up to, like you said, when you start seeing this kind of stuff. Oh, what was that?
Right.
now, just to not just put this down, maybe on a more generalized term, is just to say situational awareness. Like if you've been in law enforcement or retail, to look for shoplifters, for example, to give that more a relating point. If you haven't been in retail or in law enforcement, you don't know what to look for shoplifters. But if you've been in the game, you know what to look for as a more relatable topic, I guess
Yeah.
would be.
It was like, before I became a cop, I could drive down the street and I paid zero attention to expired tags. But now that my brain has been conditioned to look for those expired tags, I see them all the time. Even now that I'm not a cop, I can't really stop seeing them. I drive my wife and my sons nuts if we're uptown. They're like, that tag's expired by 6 months. They're like, why do you even care? You're not a cop anymore. I'm like, I don't know. I can't stop noticing it.
But to General Dalton's point, that's the same thing. But to take it even a step different from that, just because we've talked about this behind in the waiting room behind the scenes, you get a car, you don't ever pay attention to this car driving down the road, but you get that car, and then all of a sudden, every other car you see is the car you're driving. Just because
Exactly.
your mind is, you're now thinking of that, your mind is open, and you're now seeing it. They were there before, you just didn't pay attention. All these things were there, but your mind was not open
Right.
to seeing the things that you need to see. It's just like
They,
being a hunter versus not being a hunter. If you've been a hunter and you've been out in the woods, you already know the things to look for to say, okay, yeah, there's been deer here.
right.
There's a scratch, there's a scrape, there's a rub, there's a game
When we
trail.
say, when we say the key word here is mental conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that, because if you're in a totally, excuse me, if you're totally in a setting that you've never been in before, you're not going to be able to completely be aware of everything that you're supposed to be aware of. But if you've been a lifelong hunter, or you've been in retail catching shoplifters, you've been in law enforcement, looking for drunk drivers, whatever your specialty was. Like me, when I had the canine, my specialty was getting dope off the streets. So I was conditioned to look for certain things in cars. And if I just saw that one thing, but you start seeing two or three more things, but because you know it and you've seen it before, you're like, oh, okay, there it is. It's the
Like
same
a car
way.
with 25 air fresheners hanging
Yeah.
on the review.
Which, in the normal person driving down the street, like, why their car must stink.
There's a reason.
No.
Yeah, but it's the same way for everything like that. If you know what you're looking for, and you know what to look for, things like that are easy to see and easy to spot.
Right. Speaking of spotting them, uh, the Navajo say that the Yinatalushi can be spotted and sighted and singled out from other people because their eyes glow like an animal's, sometimes even more so, even in human form. In animal form, they can be spotted by moving stiffly and usually stiffly and unnaturally or acting strangely. And a lot of times, when in animal form, their eyes will look more human than animal. Really weird how that works.
But
Said they'll also use like a form of necromancy. They can reanimate corpses. and send them against people they want to curse. They will use powdered bone to create poisons and blow it at people.
Here we go.
Gotta love Northwoods.
Northwoods, I'll take care of you if I ever pull her over, brother.
There
I
was
promise.
one account that I read of a family that was being terrorized by a skinwalker on the Navajo res. This large mangy black dog kept coming around, and it would hit the side of the house. It would talk to them, trying to get them to come outside. They would find it standing on its hind legs, looking in windows. And one evening, just as the sun was starting to go down, they were out in the yard planting flowers, and this thing came bounding in. Well, the grandmother told them to run inside. So they go inside, and they noticed that grandmother wasn't feeling good, and they called a local shaman. The local shaman came and he sprinkled corn pollen around the property, did blessings, and he started checking the grandmother, and she had a shard of bone, of human bone, lodged in her shoulder. And once he removed it, she started getting better. So these things are pure nasty. One account came back from the early '80s of a family that lived on the Navajo res that raised sheep, and they didn't know if somebody had sent it after them because they were jealous because they were starting to gain some prosperity. They had a large flock of sheep, or if the skinwalker just targeted them. They don't know how it happened, but a skinwalker started coming around, and they went out to their sheep pen one night and found all of them dead, piled up in the corner without a mark on them. They've just been piled up in the corner of the big pen, and every one of them had been killed and just tossed in the corner. And they found what looked like wolf tracks, but they were bipedal. Now, had that been like a dog man or a werewolf, it would have eaten the sheep, at least gutted them or torn them up. There would have been blood. But they couldn't find a mark on any of the sheep. And then the family started getting sick, and they had to call in. They had to call in a shaman to come in and bless the family and bless their land. And it still tormented them for years, up to the point they finally abandoned the property.
So, like I said, long and the short, if you get a skinwalker, you just got screwed.
More or less, it's something very, very dangerous. And there's a reason why the Navajo won't even call them by name. They don't like talking about it. They say talking about one will bring its attention down upon you. Again, they are pure evil, about as close to pure evil as you're going to find in the physical world.
That's a lot like the Cajun superstition with the Rougarou.
Mm-hmm.
They will not talk. A true Cajun will not talk about it because they believe if you talk about it, you will basically bring that entity onto you, and you will turn into one. So you won't hear them even say that word most of the time.
Right.
I got Cajun relatives. they won't say, you can't get them to say that word for nothing.
I was going to read something. I forgot what it was. Excuse me. Coffee's making me belch. Eric Saab says there have been sightings of skinwalkers in Australia. How the heck did they get here? Dude, once they're capable of going anywhere. They're not simply confined to the American Southwest or the reservations. These things are pure evil, and they can pretty much come and go as they please. And again, there's not just one of them.
Just say it wasn't something to deal with an aborigine.
Right. It could be that they've locked onto something like that. I mean, I'm sure the Aboriginal medicine men talk about medicine men that have gone dark in their own way. Talking about what do they call it? Dream walking or dream time.
Yeah.
Their Aboriginal shaman could have been corrupted very much like a Yinatalushi. So it's entirely possible that Skinwalker is not simply a Navajo thing. We know a lot of the desert tribes talk about the same thing. So it's not without, outside of the realm of possibility that any shaman or any type of holy man could go that dark if they were willing to do the rituals. Hey, Darkwoods.
I just, I think a lot of the like we were talking about earlier, a lot of these things tying in.
Mm-hmm.
What we just discussed, that could be why we get some of these folklore, these legend that has that little bit of Native American flair, I guess, for the lack of a better term. Maybe they've seen an actual skinwalker. That's where you get some of the, they kind of blend their local stuff into it, but that's what they were seeing is a true skinwalker. But they've just said, there was a legend about a werewolf, and that's why, this particular group may think of a skinwalker as a werewolf versus being something else.
Exactly. And this is something that's not. I wouldn't consider a skinwalker a cryptid in any way. Much like I don't really consider a Wendigo to be a cryptid. They're supernatural in origin.
I would say entity or malevolent force.
Right. While there are certain similarities, like the changing of forms between the Wendigo and the Skinwalker lore, I think that's where they begin and end because they are very different. And these Skinwalkers, they could be. I mean, you could be walking down the street and walk past one. I was hoping we could get William on the show to give us the Lakota perspective on that, but he's having some computer problems. Tim Grimes went to high school with Tim. Says, "What if the Wendigo is such a vile entity that that the inhabitants of other planes cast them out, exile them here?" I think you may be onto something there. I've often said that I think a true Wendigo is a demonic entity. It's the spirit of starvation, the spirit of hunger. It only seems to come in the vilest of winters, the coldest of months, and it infects people and forces them to hunger for human flesh. I don't think the true Wendigo can be stopped. I think lesser Wendigos or people that have been possessed by the Wendigo can be stopped, but I think the Wendigo itself is demonic of nature, and I don't think it can be ever killed.
So are you saying we're going to have a spike in Wendigo population since this last cold snap?
You just might. I know it got pretty cold here. You wouldn't have been surprised to see one walking down the street. It got to minus 30. Well, that was the wind chill. Minus 10, then minus 30 with the wind chill. It was nasty.
Yep, we got down in the teens where I'm at.
Damn near zero at my place.
It was 6 degrees when I woke up Christmas morning to go work my extra duty.
Well, at least you had the heater in the car.
Yeah.
That would have been brutal without one.
Yeah,
that's what they make good thermals for.
Yeah, there are a lot of accounts of Wendigo both on and off the reservation. In fact, one of Doc's friends came on the show about a year ago and talked about his experience when he was living on the Navajo res, that they will see what they think is a person walking down the side of the road, and then they slow down to check on them. They'll either one take off incredibly fast out into the desert, or they will see that they have the facial features of some sort of animal. And so many of these stories they would talk about, they'll punch it to get out of there, and it will pace their vehicle. It speeds to like 50, 60 miles an hour, which is impossible for anything running on two legs to keep up with. Even Usain Bolt can't run that fast. And then the account that Doc's friend had, he saw the guy on the side of the road and didn't slow down because he gave him the creeps. And he said, like a mile down the road, there the guy was again. And I think the third or fourth time he passed this guy, he just basically punched it and headed for home as fast as he could get there. Stories like that appear all the time from around the reservation, especially around the Four Corners area, around Shiprock, New Mexico. That seems to be a real big hotspot for them. But they're not only associated with the res. There are a lot of stories of skinwalker type creatures coming in from all over the country. And then here just a minute ago that Eric was saying that they're skinwalker type creatures sighted in Australia. So these things are dark, malevolent energy. It's not unheard of that they can literally go anywhere they want.
And what would stop them?
Exactly. And, especially if I was a creature that can only be stopped by something knowing my true name, I wouldn't be attacking people anywhere near where anybody knew who I was. That's to me, that's just good sense. But one of the stories,
But
the thing that struck me was this elderly woman who was home alone kept having this dog creature coming up to her house. It would try the doorknob. It would try to get in, and she took shotgun shells and dipped them into the white ash inside her fireplace, loaded them and shot at the creature, wounded it, and drove it off. Um, and again, corn pollen. There are two or three other things for some reason they're slipping my brain, but corn pollen is a big one. White ash, from a particularly hot fire. You take that white ash and sprinkle it around your doorstep, around your windows. That's supposed to keep them away. But these things are obscenely powerful creatures. Uh, if you've got one coming around you, or you think you've seen one, yeah, you're definitely going to want to take some precautions, because these things are absolutely terrifying.
now, DA, this just might be what you call a duh, but it's a shapeshifter, so that's probably why it factors into it. That way, you don't know its true identity to get the name.
Right. Tim Grimes says the Discovery has a series called These Woods Are Haunted. I love that series. That has an episode of a young man out west who had an ongoing recent encounter with a Wendigo. Very compelling and well produced. I need to find that episode and watch that, because that sounds pretty good. I like that series. I thought I'd watched all of them, but I don't remember that episode, so I might have to see about it. Darkwood says one would think invoking and if God would drive them away. Whatever religion you subscribe to, whatever power you pray to, I would definitely be praying if I encountered something like this, because these things are just, they are as dark gets. Um, Sherry Porter says, so hot ash, not ashes from an ash tree. As far as I know, you can't find ash trees in the Southwest. They don't grow well in arid desert conditions. So when the Navajos say white ash, and the accounts I heard they were specifically talking about ashes from a fire that burned hot, and you had white ash. Uh, oh, Blues is here. Hey, Blues. Um, So I don't think it's specifically from an ash tree. I just think it has to be a purified ash, a white ash from a fire that burned that hot. Um, I've heard nothing about silver. A lot of creatures you'll hear from myth and legend, they talk about how silver works against it, but I've never heard that associated with the Skinwalker. Um, my best advice is, if you think you've spotted one, if you think one is fixated on you, get somebody to bless your house. Find someone like William Nighthawk, who's a shaman in his religion, and in the Lakota tradition. There are many places have reservations nearby. I mean, I'm within an hour's drive of several reservations just across the Oklahoma border, and this area that I live in, um, back before it was largely settled by white settlers moving west post Civil War, it was Osage territory. So if I encountered something in this area, I would go speak to an Osage. Um, but again, if you're whatever your religious beliefs are, prayer, burning incense, burning sage, you'll want to do something to protect yourself. Um, this is a fairly short account. It says it was neither fully human nor fully animal. In July 2004, near Gallup, New Mexico, I had my first and only encounter with a skinwalker. Before this, I used to say, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I'm a believer now, and what I saw was not full human nor full animal. I was moving and had just completed the cleaning and was with my 10-year-old son. We'd called it a night and were headed to our new place. As we walked out the front door, I saw a figure move behind my neighbor's car to a nearby tree that stood between our apartments. It didn't have red glowing eyes, snarling teeth, or rotten smell. It did move quickly, but not quick enough to avoid the light from a nearby light post and the porch lights. It didn't look at me or come toward me. It moved as if trying to avoid being seen. I was within 15 feet of it, but I did not look back to fully inspect it. What I saw was a wolf-like animal that sort of resembled the beast in Beauty and the Beast, just not cartoonish. It had brown fur that completely covered it. It wasn't a pelt. It was a very large wolf. It didn't have any human traits except that it walked on its hind legs. It cowered behind the tree as we got into our vehicle. When we got in, I'd asked my son, "Did you see that?" Thankfully, he hadn't. My brother-in-law insists that it wasn't a skinwalker because I would never have seen it. To this day, I can picture what it looked like. I know they exist, and I pray I never encountered one again. That was on the Navajo res.
That's wild.
Yeah, these things are being seen even today. Now, most people that live outside the Navajo res had never even heard of these things until like the early 90s when stories first started coming forward. But now that a lot of people, a lot of Navajo who've left the res are more willing to talk about it. But again, I don't think we're ever going to know everything the Navajo know because they don't like to talk about it. And more specifically, they don't share everything with outsiders. It's very interesting the relationship that these things have because the Navajo believe that their shaman, their medicine men, are they are well aware of the dark magic and can sometimes call upon it to do healing. But you know, the Skinwalker basically takes that and is corrupted by it, and then goes as far away from the teachings of the Navajo that they possibly can. It's the antithesis of everything they stand for. It's an absolute pure evil act that corrupts these things. It corrupts their soul. If in exchange for power, they call on darkness that you don't come back from. Darkwood says the encounters are ramping up more and more. Time has a purpose. I think there's a reason we're seeing creatures like this more and more these days, and I don't think it's just because the internet makes it easier for people to talk about it. I think there's a very big reason why we're starting to see a lot of these creatures a lot more in a lot of places we didn't see them previously.
So, just quick questions. As I was listening to you describe that, in the Apex Predator series, the dog soldiers that turned to the dark side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
are they now sort of maybe skinwalkers?
Pretty much, yeah. That's kind of my take on it. See, when I first started researching the Apex Predator books, the Hotametaneo, which are the dog, that's the Cheyenne word for dog soldiers. The dog soldiers were founded by the Cheyenne. To basically fight against the cavalry who had been, attacking and massacring villages. Now, that's not to say that all dog soldiers were Cheyenne. The dog soldiers had such a huge support from the tribes that other tribes, including the Lakota, the Dakota, the Comanche, a lot of the Plains Indians joined with them. Braves would join and become part of the dog soldiers. Now, when I started the Apex Predator books, I wanted to focus on a group of Lakota. Not for any particular reason. It's just because when I created the character of William Grey Eagle, I wanted him to be a Lakota warrior, and so I made the majority of the dog soldiers that he encountered Lakota as well to give him a sense of familial connection. But I did, draw a lot on the Skinwalker references to say that in their beliefs that the dog soldiers could take on the form of wolves in order to fight evil. But they danced along that edge. If they ever crossed over, if they ever let the dark magic call to them too much, they would be cursed to become these dog men. They could not change back. They didn't come back from that.
But there's a possibility that you can come back.
Well,
sort of, kind of, maybe.
Maybe.
It's going in that direction, but it could be going in Who knows? You got to
We'll
wait.
see. If you're for those of you who haven't read the books, we're talking about a character called Black Fox, who's Will Gray Eagle's father. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but let's just say we'll see where Black Fox ends up. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on some of the.
But yeah, that might have been a little bit of a skewed off tangent, but that kind of rang or resonated with what we were saying. You know.
No, you have a good point there, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, because they can be anything. So I mean, if you're already a shapeshifter, basically, but if you're one of those dog soldiers, but if you walk on over to that dark side.
Well, it said that many of the tribes, their medicine men, and this is including the Navajo, that powerful medicine men could call upon their spirit animal and take the form of that one particular animal, but that was not an evil act. It was a creature that embodied the characteristics that they wanted to portray to their not only their people but to their warriors in general. And that's kind of the direction I took it with the Apex Predator books. But once they've gone too far, that's when they become corrupt and can't turn back.
And Doc and Anthony ain't here, so it won't go as far as it normally goes. But you talk about what they have to do and how dark they have to be in another tie-in. Think about, because we've talked about how George Lucas, we felt like he had a lot. He uses a lot of cryptid influences in his work.
Right.
Okay. Think about when Anakin was turning to the dark side. What did he have to do to prove his allegiance to the Emperor? He had to go massacre all them kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as far on the dark side as you could possibly go.
Right. It makes me wonder how he was possible for him to come back from that.
Right. But look at the tie-in that from what we're talking about right now. Look how that ties in, and all the tie-ins from that you can start thinking about popular culture, how they tie into these legends and folklores that we have.
So many similarities.
Yeah.
Roger Davis had a good comment. He said, Nevada has a judge and lawyer trained in native law and spiritual practices. Many cases of magic, especially in divorce cases. Source Randy Yazzie, Deny Elder. Darkwoods had a good question. He says, so dog soldiers are dog men. So if so, they have free will to choose being good or bad. The ones there seem to be good so far. Look at it this way for the books, the Apex Predator books. The dog soldiers, the Hotametaneo, they change to the wolf. They call upon the spirit of the wolf, but they go right up to that edge. If they ever cross over, that's when they fall into the category of dogmen. They are locked in that form. They don't come back from that. And that's something I kind of drew heavily on the Skinwalker legend about. But they will use that dark. They call upon that energy to give them the wolf form, and that is a form of dark energy. However, once they go beyond a certain point, is where it corrupts them, and they aren't able to return from that.
To just sum it up, you're walking the razor's edge, and once they slip left or right, that's it.
Right. Toshi Wolf says, I mean, look at Will in the events of Hunter's Moon. If Cody hadn't been with him, I think he might have gone to the dark side. Will was this close. He was this close to being fully corrupted. One of the points I stressed in the book is he healed from the wounds that he took from the Rougarou, but the scars stayed. He had scars all over his face. He had scars all over his body. And when he encountered Sarah and she brought him back from the edge, that's when the scars went away. So that was heavy imagery on my part. I really intended people see Will. I mean, he was hanging on by his fingernails.
Right. You could almost paint that as a picture of he was not complete until Sarah came back to him, and then when she brought him back, it brought him back completely because those missing pieces. So
right. Yeah, he was as close to going dark side as you could possibly get without. I mean, he would have only taken another nudge or two, and he would have been corrupted to the point he couldn't shift.
He almost went full Anakin.
His mouth. Yeah. Oh, that one's a long one. Never mind. I don't want to read that one. That one would be like reading one of Robbie's encounters. 12 miles long. This one's called The Grove. It says this didn't happen to me, but to a very close friend of mine. I've heard a lot about coyotes and skinwalkers, and had a weird experience or two with coyotes. Creepiest was waking up to my sleeping bag being surrounded in paw prints without ever hearing them during the night. That would be unnerving if you woke up and there were paw prints all around your sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a little unnerving, but never hearing anything paranormal, so to speak. Patrick's story, however, kept me from going back to my favorite backcountry secret stash. He was leaving the area one morning. He'd been camping there a couple of days and said there was a coyote that always seemed to be close by, like in his peripheral vision, but never overt. He loaded up his truck and started to drive down the washout to the fire road. At the end of the wash, he could see the coyote following him. When he pulled onto the road, it was running next to him. Now he was freaked out, so he sped up. He said he was going 35 or so, and it was running along beside him. Definitely not possible. When he looked back, the coyote was running on two legs and was wearing what Patrick said looked like buckskin pants. An instant later, it was a person wearing a coyote fur keeping pace with his truck. When he looked again, it was gone. He never went back to the Grove after that.
Can't say as I blame him.
Yep, that spot's burned.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't be camping there, especially I would have stopped going when there were paw prints all around my sleeping bag. Billy Mitchum says, my father told me you could use the power, but you did not change. He was Lakota. And that's something I was looking at as well, because it was said that some of they believed that some of the dog soldiers could change form. And that's why the cavalry hunted them to what they believed was extinction. The cavalry put the U.S. military put entire units together to do nothing but hunt down dog soldiers. And it said that the last of the dog soldiers died when they drove a stake in the ground with a leather strip in it and held the leather strip in their mouth, and they fought to the death in that without ever leaving that ring with a pile of bodies around them. So when you talk about the dog soldiers, these were such feared warriors. That's what drew my fascination about them. That's what made me want to use them as the nexus point for my Apex Predator series, because they are such incredible warriors, and they were feared to the point that the military thought that they hunted them to extinction. And to me, that said a great deal about them. Anthony's still stuck at the airport. Dude, I'm sorry, man. Doesn't look like you're going to be able to join us tonight.
But you say that the how to say this the way I want to say it. When the Lakota went north into Canada with Sitting Bull, what's to say that there wasn't dog soldiers that took it north of the line into Canada and transferred their knowledge as a refuge to the First Nation. So I had things politically correct terms.
Well, to me, it only makes sense that if they knew they were being hunted, that they would scatter their warriors to disseminate the knowledge. They would not want the knowledge of the dog soldiers to fade. So I have no doubt that there's probably still secret societies on reservations, both in Canada and the United States, where there are people who practice the old ways of the dog soldier. For another great example was the ghost dance, the great ghost dance that was taught by Wovoka. They danced. Many tribes came together to dance the ghost dance, and they thought it would renew the land. It would drive the white settlers away from their land and restore the buffalo. Who's to say it just didn't do that in another world, another dimension? There were thousands upon thousands of these warriors, yet there's so few of them left on reservations. Makes you wonder where they go, where they went. I think that maybe their prayers were answered. The Great Spirit took a great many of them to another place where they could hunt and be free. At least I like to think something like that happened. The Tom Berenger movie Dog Soldiers was a great movie. Tim is definitely right. He says the Department of Interior, National Park Service, and Bureau of Land Management work around the clock to keep the lid on all this stuff. It's about supernatural containment, not the conservation of natural resources. I'm 100% on board with that. I think the reason Teddy Roosevelt founded the National Park Service was to keep us out of large sections of land, which are still closed to us today.
Oh yeah, me and you've definitely had this talk before.
Yeah, it's my tinfoil hat. Um, Teddy Roosevelt theory, which I think I'm on to something with that theory.
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
I quite agree with you if you just read between the lines of how everything was said and done.
Eric Saab had a good question. He says, "Have you guys ever heard of Bigfoot, Dogman, and Werewolf being involved in American Civil Wars and the War of Independence? Of the evidence and recorded history. I'd love to see some of the notes if you've got some. But there were reports of cryptids from Civil War battles. For example, the Battle of Chickamauga, where they talk about old Green Eyes, this green-eyed monster that would come out and carry off bodies. Some
Well,
versions
what
of
do
the
you, what
story they claimed
I
it
mean,
was a soldier who lost his head to a cannonball and was looking for his body. And others, it was something more macabre that was carrying bodies away from the field.
well, just sitting here and think about it this way: most of your Civil War battles happen in wilderness areas. They were not in major urban areas. Not a vast majority of them. So if you have Bigfoot or Dogmen, it'd be like they just follow the damn turkey vultures to the damn pile of bodies, and it's all you can eat buffet.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say
Um,
that the Union? Who's to say that the Union or the Confederacy didn't have specialized provost marshal units fighting them?
Well, it's much like today. I mean, I lost a deer kill to what I believe was a Bigfoot. A lot of hunters report losing kills to these creatures. So they've learned that gunshots. If humans are shooting at something, they're killing something. Gunshots sometimes means lunch, and there are reports in Alaska of grizzly bear that have learned that behavior. They'll follow a gunshot and look for the kill and take it. Sentinel's in the house. Hey, brother, thank you for joining us, man. Chairman Meow says, didn't Teddy see a Sasquatch? I believe Teddy did. He recorded the event called the Bauman incident in his book The Wilderness Hunter. But the level of detail he told in that story leads me to believe that Teddy Roosevelt was in fact Bauman. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of old hillbillies that mountain men that lived in the backwoods all their lives, and you don't get that level of detail out of these guys. Getting the story out of them at all is like pulling teeth. But Teddy had incredible detail, and it led me to believe that Bauman was in fact Teddy Roosevelt. But he didn't want to go on record as saying he'd seen a monster out in the woods because he still had political aspirations. Flash forward, Teddy Roosevelt founds the National Park Service and cordons off millions of acres that we're still not allowed to and not allowed to take guns into. Northwood's investigation says gunshot equals dinner bell. It does in that case when it's documented where grizzly bear have done it. So it's not unfathomable that dogmen or Bigfoot have learned that behavior as well.
Well, and sometimes it seems like it becomes okay, I'm going to undo what this president's done. That's something that no other president has ever tried to touch or say anything about. It's just
It's been added to.
it's unspoken. I mean, they don't talk about stuff like that. Why?
Right. And some of these places where a lot of these old cryptid stories came from, and I know we're kind of getting off the Skinwalker thing here. We'll get back to it, but this is kind of relevant. Some of these places where a lot of these, and I know here in Missouri, for example, what they refer to as the Beast of the Valley along the Osage River. A lot of this happened. Well, of course, this happened in the 1920s, but in the LBL area, it happened in 1963. A lot of these areas that have rich histories of these creatures are areas that they decided to build hydroelectric dams and bury a lot of that land underwater. Lake of the Ozarks, for example, covers a huge section of Missouri and basically buries several towns. There are several intact towns at the bottom of Lake of the Ozarks. The original city of Max Creek is completely underwater. They rebuilt Max Creek a few miles from where it was. But if you know where it was at, where the original was at, they say you can dive down there and find those buildings sitting there like they're lost to time, because that water is largely spring fed and it's very cold. So those old buildings are just sitting down there.
Well, to borrow another famous supernatural writer in the Harry Dresden Files, they talk about the magic being disrupted in there by moving water.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a hydroelectric dam sucking water through there that keeps the water moving and the undercurrents, so that disrupts the energy. Not to put on tinfoil hat too tight, but if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
Very much so. I wrote a short story about the Beast of the Valley. It's set back in the 1800s, but it's based on stories I heard as a kid about what they referred to as the Beast of the Valley. But there's still sightings of a dog-man-like creature in the areas near where Lake of the Ozarks was formed. There's stories coming out of Montreal, Missouri. And then you cross Lake of the Ozarks, and over on the far side of the lake up near Osage Beach, there's stories from up near Bagnell Dam. There's a ghost town right there at Bagnell Dam, but population 0. It's an abandoned town right there near Bagnell Dam. My grandfather helped build that dam. And there were stories during the time of the construction of workers who were walking home at the end of their work shift and would just never return. And this was during the Great Depression, when work was hard to find. If you had a job like helping build the dam, you didn't just walk away from that because it was good money. So they were the guys that were walking home to their family and were just never heard from them again. To me, them just quitting the job doesn't seem as likely.
Now you say that, it starts making me wonder about, in my part of the country, in Virginia, we have what's called Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake. When they built those two dams in the late, what was it, 60s and 70s? Mm-hmm. They did not log off the areas. From what I heard and read, they just freaking built the dam and just let it back up. It's like, it just always struck me as queer. Is you build a dam, but you don't log it off behind it.
Right.
What were they trying to bury in Central Virginia?
It's a good question. I mean, you've got stories like around Lake of the Ozarks. They didn't just flood that valley. They forced people off their land. They forced people out of their homes. There are whole cities down there and numerous graveyards that are underneath Lake of the Ozarks. What's up, Doc?
Hey.
I'm repping for you, Doc.
Right on. Got 3 hats out of 5 folks. That ain't too bad.
Doc, right here. She's right here beside me.
Oh, mine's behind the green screen. I almost wore a Dark Angel shirt tonight, but I went with my faded Dr. Sasquatch shirt.
Yeah, sorry guys, we had to drive through a mini blizzard getting back to the house. It hit us a lot sooner than we thought. We went out to supper, and it was like I was going warp speed and trying to do the Kessel run,
in 12 seconds.
12 parsecs.
Doc, you want to introduce your buddy?
Yeah. This is it's my good friend Patrick Akiba. He and I have known each other
since God was a corporal.
Yeah, 20-something years.
22 years. Almost.
Yeah. So, and in his job, he travels a good bit, and he's gone through some of the Four Corners area and done some work down there, and had quite the interesting encounter. So,
yeah, we'll definitely want to hear about that.
Okay.
So, Doc, you said you got a blizzard going on. Do you have the heavy ordnance out in case you find a Wendigo messing with your snow machine?
I don't have a snow machine just because that SOB defiled it last time. So, yeah. I got a
Chairman Meow says, you saying they flooded it purposely, DA? Well, I know that the guy that owned Ha Ha Tonka, the castle at Ha Ha Tonka, was considered one of the richest men in Missouri. and he fought tooth and nail to keep that dam from being constructed, but it went through anyway. So I don't know if they deliberately flooded that area, but I know that multiple rivers combined into the Osage in that river valley, and it was a good spot for a hydroelectric dam. But at the time, some very powerful people in the state of Missouri fought hard to keep that thing from going in, yet still went in. Eric Testerman was saying, I've heard stories of scuba divers having ghost encounters while diving the sunken cities in Table Rock. There are several man-made lakes in Missouri, big ones. And when they made those, they kicked people wholesale out of their houses. There are sunken towns, sunken graveyards. There's some creepy crap going on here in Missouri. Now, Doc, let's hear Patrick's story.
Okay. The story, actually Carrie, I'll get into it, but Carrie actually remembers even more. He remembers the exact phone call I made, and I think I've actually kind of tried to regress it to the back of my mind because it freaked me out so much as far as remembering details. It was, I had time off, so I was at Carrie's house and had to drive back on the Navajo res. I can't tell you exactly where on the res I was. It was dark. I'm going down the road and I noticed something off to my right. And Gary, what did I explain to you on that phone call?
You said it looked like a dude. What was it he was wearing? I mean, you were there.
Talking about skinwalkers. I mean, it was basically skinwalkers. If I'm correct, or shapeshifters. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's shaman who have gone as dark as you can get.
Yeah. So, and this one had, what was the skin? I said that this guy looked like he was wearing.
He was wearing a skin. He was wearing a skin, wasn't he?
Yeah. What was it? A coyote? I don't remember. And going down, and so I sped up, going down the road, several miles down the road, and I look over to the right, and I can see something again, and it's just there, and from that, it freaked me out so bad, I pretty much just kept my eyes straight ahead. I wouldn't look to the right or left anymore.
Well, the thing that stuck with me is what you told me about his freaking eyes. That's what, not the fact that he appeared several miles ahead of you, when he was walking. I mean, that made me have my brown pants on a little bit. But what did you said? I remember you distinctly saying something about his eyes when the headlights hit him and he turned around. What his eyes shined.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't. What color do wolves' eyes and coyotes' eyes glow, Robbie?
Usually like more of a greenish, goldish type color.
Kind of like a yellow gold.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So, yeah, and that's what he called me as soon as he got home, and he was shook up, and it's just like I think with Fred. I mean, he's sitting here breathing hard. Kind of near how Fred gets those the anxiety when his dogs pick up when he's telling his story.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's over here. I can see a physical reaction to him right now, but he said the eye shine is what got him. He said it would have been so much the eye shine that freaked him out, but the fact that the dude appeared several miles up the road ahead of him when he was on foot. So, I don't know. What do y'all think? What's y'all's professional opinion?
Well, that's not an uncommon story coming out of the Four Corners area. Lots of stories of people seeing creatures walking along the side of the road, and they'll slow down. Like in one case, they saw an old woman walking down the side of the road. What they thought was a Navajo woman, and they slowed down to ask her if she needed a ride, and she had like a head covering. And when she turned and looked at them, her face was more animalistic than human, and they punched it and took off and passed her again multiple times on the same stretch of road. So that kind of story is not an uncommon Skinwalker encounter.
Was his face human, or did you notice, or just?
Dude, I can't. I mean, I'm going to be truthful. I can't recall.
That's fine. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation anyway. But yeah, he was down there in that area. How many months did you work down there?
Probably 3 months.
Yeah, and he was going to say the S word, and one of the guys just kind of stopped him right there in the clinic. Is like, yeah, we don't
say that here.
We don't talk about that in these here parts.
Yeah, one guy did talk to me about it. He actually said that we don't like to talk about this, but since you don't know, and he just basically told me we already knew what we already know now. So.
Freaky stuff, man.
Hey,
anyway.
Doc, can we answer Silver Fox's question?
Can anybody recommend decent books on Dogman, please? Well, I mean, you are looking at the freaking Tom Clancy of Cryptids over here.
Well, my books are all fiction that draw heavily on real legend. I think she means she's looking for books on that aren't fiction. So,
so you talking about a nonfiction book?
Yeah, check out any of the books by Barton Nunnally. Mysterious Kentucky Volume 1 and 2. He talks about Dogman quite a bit in that. Ken Gerhard does some Dogman stuff. Trying to think anybody else. Lyle Blackburn, I think, did a book on Dogmen. Those are all in the nonfiction category, and I'm going to be doing one in the coming future, just on different versions of the Dogman legend. It's going to compile just about Dogman and the different ways it's interpreted in different cultures. Also adding in the werewolf legend, because I really think it's all one creature. Just different ways to explain it. So watch in the next year or so for not only a nonfiction Dogman book for me, but another one that I'll be working on Bigfoot, types of Bigfoot as well.
Awesome.
Well, me and Doc are going to take any chance we can to plug your books, though.
We appreciate it, brother.
Ain't that right,
but
Doc?
I have done years and years of research on Dogman and Dogman behavior, and that went into writing my books. Even though they are works of fiction, they are based on behaviors from encounters, from research, from lots of different stories coming out of not only LBL but around the world. So while they are works of fiction, they draw heavily on real legend.
So, put you on the spot there for a second, DA. Do you have, are we doing a Saturday show or?
Yeah, we'll have a show this Saturday.
Okay, I didn't know whether you might have made this already a topic for your Saturday show going into next year, literally going into next year with it. But if you got a TBD list ready to go?
Oh, my TBD list is extensive and it keeps growing.
I've seen it. I didn't know if you'd actually start trying to nail some of the critters down.
Little by little, I'll whittle it. But the thing is every time I take one item off the list, I add 5. I'll get into a conversation with you or with Norm Meredith or with Robbie or Anthony, and an idea will come to me and I'm like, oh, that'll make a good series. Richie Evans says, question, any real footage of Dogmen out there like Miss Patty and Bluff Creek? I've seen some alleged Dogman footage, but I haven't really seen anything that I would consider a smoking gun footage. I've seen some stuff that could be a Dogman. Even the footage that we took in Joe Bald, it's not clear enough to say definitively that it's a Dogman, but I think we got some good footage in Joe Bald. It was completely accidental. We were not trying to catch a Dogman on film. But if you go to my YouTube channel go to the YouTube channel here and look up the Joe Bald breakdown video, you'll see the analysis of that video, and I'm pretty sure it was a Dogman. I can't say definitively it was shot on a cell phone. It was not our intention to go out and film cryptids. I was shooting a promotional video for one of my books, The Lakeview Man. But what we caught on camera is pretty frightening. So hopefully you guys will check that out and let me know what you think. So how's the weather out y'all's way, Doc?
Snowy.
Snowy.
Yeah, temperature's dropping, so we're supposed to get about 6 inches, 8
3 to
inches.
6, yeah.
It says 3 to 6. Well, yeah, that could turn into 8 around here.
There's snow with a chance of Wendigos.
Man, I hope not. They need to stay their ass up in the mountains. They don't need to come out here on the plains. I could see them from a ways.
Whose dog was that?
That'd be my goofball. He's not
I'll
happy.
make sure. I'll make sure it won't dox.
No, I got my dogs on the other side, and John's dog's right down here. So we got a room full of dogs.
Yeah. Mine's not
Myself.
happy with me right now.
Oh man. So where are we at? Came in here an hour late. My apologies.
Oh, we were talking about not only the Skinwalker, but how it has similarities to other legends as well, which kind of got us off on Dogman and other stuff. But
Hold on.
he's having one. Scott George says,
I'm going to go take care of that.
have you ever heard any old timers talk about Dogman from back, say, in the 50s or early 60s? I had collected some stories from some old fellers that lived up near Sleeper, Missouri. This would have been, these guys were probably in their 70s at the time I talked to them, and this would have been 1986 or 87. And they told me some stories about the Lake of the Ozarks area. What I was talking about, the beast of the lake, well, the beast of the river, or the beast of the valley. Talking about what they referred to as a werewolf type creature. That would attack farms, attack farm animals. And this is from back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Although they didn't call it Dogman, the term Dogman really didn't come around until more recent times. But if you look at old newspaper clippings from back in the 1800s, you'll see stories all the time that say wild man attacks farm. And the description's very much like a Bigfoot or very much like a Dogman. Although they didn't have words for these things back then, they referred to it as a wild man or a wolf man or a hermit in the woods you'd gone feral. There's a lot of stories like that from those old newspaper articles that when we look at them through the modern lens, they're describing a cryptid, but they didn't know what to call it. Some of the term like Bigfoot. Bigfoot's only been around since Jerry Cruz coined the term. No, actually, it wasn't Jerry Cruz. It was coined because of Jerry Cruz sightings in California in the late 1950s. It was coined by a writer for the local paper.
Bigfoot terrorizing logging
right.
camp.
And it wasn't until that time that the phrase Bigfoot actually came around. But if you look at Native American traditions going back thousands upon thousands of years, tribes all across North America have a name for a creature that when they describe it, it's a Bigfoot type creature. The Cherokee call it the Sulkaloo. The Navajo, the Lakota call it the Shiatonka, which in their language means big elder brother. There are names like Oma, Bukwas. Any one of 100 tribes, each one has a different name for it. And it's really fantastic that when you look at these legends and compare them on how much similarities they have. And some of the tribes talk about them being like another tribe that they would trade with that just lived up in the mountains and were reclusives. But then you've got a lot of Pacific Northwest legends of these creatures coming in and stealing women, children, even men from teepees at night. Or if somebody was out, straggler by themselves, especially near a berry patch, might just come up missing. Was one story from one of the Pacific Northwest tribes. I believe it was the Salish near the Cascade Range of a 16-year-old girl who was kidnapped by one, and 6 or 7 months later came stumbling back into camp pregnant, gave birth to a deformed baby covered in hair. So there's lots of stories like that floating around from these Native American tribes, some good, some really, really bad. But the similarities among these names, the similarities among these descriptions is what I find most compelling, because long before any of us had a word for these type of creatures, the Native Americans were seeing it.
Well, it's like what Robbie was saying. That's what my mind immediately goes to when you start talking late 1800s, early 1900s. Is your rail workers or your logging crews going up in the mountains for the big standing timbers?
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
there are a lot of sightings from loggers, like timber cruisers will run into these things when they get out in the deep woods. There are reports of loggers that have been driven off, had their equipment flipped over. Even the road crew that worked for Jerry Crews when they first coined the phrase Bigfoot, they were finding 55-gallon drums full of diesel fuel that had been thrown off the mountainside. You're not going to find too many guys that can make that happen. Now, an empty 55-gallon drum, just about any one of us could pick up and chuck it off the hillside. But a 55-gallon drum full, yeah, that's going to be several hundred pounds. I could roll one, but they said they didn't see any marks on the ground of it being rolled, like it had just been picked up and tossed. Eric Saab says, have you guys ever heard about the baby almasty that was captured in Russia? No, that's a new one on me.
It seemed like didn't they call that the Russian wild man?
I think so, yeah.
That they had caught.
Mary Staunton had a good comment. She says, does anyone know about the plane crash where a survivor of the crash watched several dogmen drag away the dead bodies? I have not heard that story, but it would make perfect sense. There are stories of plane crashes that just go completely missing. I mean, heck, in the Pacific Northwest alone, I think there's like 26 or 28 aircraft, including a DC-10, that went down and were never found. That takes some doing for an aircraft to be completely lost. Was something out there hiding them? Was there a reason they're not finding these? But a DC-10 is not a small aircraft. For it to disappear in the woods to me, that takes some doing.
Yeah, that's a good size plane.
That's definitely a quality item, Robbie.
Real nice, Clark.
Real nice. Northwood says a full 55-gallon drum would weigh around 350 pounds. Yeah, in my prime, I could have rolled one, or even grabbed it, tilted it up, and rolled it just on the edge. Done that many times with a 55-gallon drum full of liquid. But to pick one up and chuck it, that's something else entirely. Eric Saab says there's a video of a baby almasty in Russia. I'm going to see if I can find that video. Eric, if you've got a link to that,
yeah,
send it to me in my email, daroberts@daroberts.net. I'd love to check that out. Richie even says, question DA, is Steve Lilly free to hire? If so, how much? Well, you'd have to talk to Cameron Buckner about that. He can tell you more about the Steve Lilly stories. But I've already proposed 3 more Steve Lilly stories with Cam, and he likes the idea of all 3. So those will be short stories, probably in the 15 to 20,000 word range, coming over the next few months. I just completed a short story called Demons Part 1. It's a Margolin story. For those of you who are on my Patreon, it's up for the patrons to read. I'm pretty proud of the story. It explains a lot of why Margolin is the way Margolin is.
It is very good.
Appreciate that, General. Richie Evans says 1 gallon is 8.8 pounds in 55 gallons. So that's a lot of weight. Sorry, folks, was looking at something else.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up with the comments.
Yeah, they're moving so fast, they're hard to keep up with. Oh, Neoma's in the house. Hey, Neoma, thanks for joining us. Kind of back to the Skinwalker thing. Like I was saying about the commonality of Bigfoot names across multiple tribes, there are similar legends to the Skinwalker among most of the desert tribes. Specifically, the Apache, the Pueblo, and the Ute all have a very similar legend to the Skinwalkers. So again, it's like everybody in that region was experiencing something very similar, and they had their own names for it. Skinwalkers are very dangerous, and when they fixate on a person, they not only go after their property, they go after them. They've been known to kill people. They create poison, what they call corpse powder, from the bones of the dead, and they will either make a blowgun out of a hollowed out human bone, or sometimes will throw it on people. But this corpse powder supposedly will infect you with all kinds of disease, possibly, and even kill people. Just a very nasty, nasty thing that these things do. People that have seen these creatures, had experiences with them, they all, it's a feeling of prevalent evil. They're terrified of these things, and for good reason, because they do not have good intent when they're coming around you. I mean, there are stories coming off the reservation of them killing entire herds of livestock, and not killing them for hunt, just killing them because they can.
Pure meanness.
Yeah, pure meanness. Thank you, Miss Lene. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lene.
Sorry. Looking to see if I missed anything. Billy Mitchum says, "How much to be a patron?" There are multiple levels of for the Patreon community, ranging from, I think it's $5 or $10 all the way up to significantly more. So just go by patreon.com/DA Roberts Author and check it out. I mean, there are multiple levels. Sharon Guy says, "DA, I love all your stories. Thank you, sir." Well, thank you so much. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
They good reading.
Chris M says, "DA, what's a reasonable goal for someone just starting to write? How do you get started? Short stories. I'd like to hear your origin story." I've been writing stuff since I was a kid. I mean, I've tried my hand at poetry. I've had some poetry published. In fact, one of the poems I wrote is hanging on the wall of the Vietnam vets post up in Jefferson City, Missouri. I was pretty proud of that. My brother Danny had that done. But I've been writing everything since I was a kid. Stephen King often says that he tries to write 1,000 words a day. I try to be a little more lofty in my goals. I usually shoot for about 2,500 a day. But writing is hard. Writing is not something that you can just. Ernest Hemingway said it best: "In order to be a writer, all you have to do is sit down at the keyboard and bleed." Of course, he said typewriter, but we don't really use typewriters anymore. But start out with an attainable goal. Write 50 words a day. Write 100 words a day. And when that gets easy, jump it up. It's a skill like any other. It just takes a lot of practice. It was a lot of years before I wrote anything that I felt was worthy of being published. I've got a drawer full of junk that'll never see publication because it's all bad. But every writer's got one of those. So it's a skill like any other skill. You've just got to keep practicing to get better at it. Read as much as you can, because your best writers are readers.
And then get you some good alphas.
Yeah, you definitely want a good team of alphas. Yeah, Naomi says, "Start with journaling if you don't know what else to write." A journal is a great way to get into the habit of writing. Aussie Sue says, "DA, I remember seeing a story years ago about a family they called the werewolf, as they were all covered in hair. Do you think there was some kind of inbreeding and government cover-up?" There's a family in Mexico that they're just born with this genetic disorder where they have hair all over their body, like really long.
Hypertrichosis.
Yeah, hypertrichosis, and several of them perform in the circus. And it's just one of those things where it's just a genetic disorder. In some cases, I think those people might have been misidentified as werewolves, but because of the creatures, the cynocephalus, that were spotted by both the Greeks and the Romans, where they talked about entire clans of these dog-headed warriors. I think this goes much farther back than that. Oh, RN Medics 2964 gave us a $10 donation. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Was that you, Doc? I think that name sounds familiar.
Doc's kind of freezing in and out.
Yeah, I think the storm is affecting Doc's
The
internet.
storm is affecting our internet. Yeah, that was Patrick. He's
awesome.
he's also an RN and a medic.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Now, DA,
Welcome to the DAX Machination. What's that?
DA, you mentioned Greek and Roman made me think of this from where we were talking about Vatican archives. Have you ever heard of the town of Herculaneum?
I've heard of it, but that's off the top of my head. I'm not recalling much of the details. I have to look it up.
It's a sister town to Pompeii that is, if I remember correctly, it's like buried in the Naples suburbs. I mean, it's literally that. I toured it when I went over to Italy in 2015, and you're 4 or 5 stories down, and they're still digging out from what they have dug. They're digging out like coal mining, and there's, from what I remember correctly, they've found several large archives or libraries in several of the villas there that have been frozen since the lava flows. So there's no telling what kind of literature is sitting in either one of those places.
If any of it's salvageable, it could very well be copies of stuff that we lost in the Library of Alexandria.
That's where my next thing was going to be going, is how much knowledge was lost in that.
Exactly. Well, untold knowledge was lost in the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. Chris M. pointed out that's why that clicked. There's a Herculaneum, Missouri. A lot of weird name towns in Missouri.
Well, that's like what I said earlier. There's so much stuff that is connected from places that you would never expect any connections to be made.
Right. Well, there's a story floating around, and there was even a couple of documentaries done on it of a guy finding Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon.
Well, I mean, look, all the places we talk about finding stuff that the Vikings left. I mean,
oh yeah. Thank you, Sue. Aussie Sue, thank you so much. You are awesome. Why does that keep going away?
Because we're doing the same thing we always talk about. One of us is hitting it at the same time the other one is, and it's taking it off.
What was I saying?
We were talking about Vikings leaving stuff and finding stuff like that, and stuff from other cultures and different places that you wouldn't expect to find it.
There was a Viking runestone found that was carbon dated to the 8th century. That puts it at 600 years before Christopher Columbus. Guess where that Viking runestone was found?
Was that the Missouri River?
Heavener, Oklahoma.
Was that in a farmer's field?
No, they found it in a cave.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the places I'm planning on going as soon as I can. I would really like to go down and go to that runestone. It's and the thing I find that makes me think it's legit is anybody that would have tried to fake it probably would have used the new Futhark. It's all done in the Elder Futhark. I mean, that means it's the old style Norse writing.
That's freaking cool.
Yeah, that's one of the places I really want to go.
Yeah, that's really freaking cool.
Doc, you're not far from the New Mexico border, so you're down in Skinwalker territory.
Yeah,
I know they're big down in the Four Corners area, but all across New Mexico has got sightings, and even Colorado.
Yeah, we're down. I know down there in San Juan's, they've had talk of them, and that's down there going towards Trinidad. So it's very, very widely known legend down there. You get down, I mean, New Mexico borders, what, 2.5 hours? roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 2.5 hours from here. So, yeah, it's not far at all, man. Not far.
Yeah, you're right there in the heart of it.
Yeah. They can stay right where they are. Away from me.
Naoma says, to be fair, there was a wide network of trade across North America prior to the arrival of Europeans. It might have been traded and carried there by the Native Americans, not Vikings. It was Viking script on a stone too big to move. It would take heavy equipment to move that stone. So it leads me to believe it's legit that it was actually carved by Vikings. And it's not the only one. There was a massive runestone unearthed in a field by a farmer in Minnesota. It's at one of the universities in Minnesota now, but they had to move it with a crane. And
Carved in place is the word you're looking for, I believe, DA.
Yeah. Patrick, what was it you were saying about that one?
I just remember, I mean, just watching all sorts of History Channel stuff about the one found in the farmer's field, and they immediately tried to say it was a hoax. He had done it just for attention and whatnot.
I don't think so. Considering the one in Heavener, is not someplace where you would hoax it. If you wanted to put that, or people would see it and think it was a hoax, you'd put it out where people would stumble across it. But they found it by accident, hidden in a cave. Chairman Meow says, didn't the Georgia Guidestones get bombed? No, the Guidestones got destroyed. Forrest had a good question. Says, do y'all think there may be anybody grooming younger individuals to become skinwalkers? According to Navajo, skinwalkers do actively recruit others. That there's not just one or two of them running around. There's a bunch of them. Mary Stoughton says, some people believe the Ark is in the mountains of Arkansas. Would not surprise me.
Are we talking about the Ark of the Covenant, or?
I'm assuming.
That's the only Ark I know of.
Other than Noah's. And I think that's on Mount Ararat.
Yeah, Mount Ararat.
In Turkey?
Turkey. Yeah. They've already done like GPR on all that, and they're pretty sure that that's what they found.
Eric Saab says, do you guys know about a small pyramid here in Australia? It's up in Queensland, Australia, in a place called Gympie. I hadn't heard about that one, but they are discovering pyramid-shaped structures all over the globe. In fact, there was some declassified photos from the U.S. Navy of perfect pyramid-shaped mountains covered in snow in Antarctica.
It's interesting.
Neoma says the only thing I know that's in the Arkansas mountains is moonshine stills. Yeah, and hillbillies.
So stills got to have somebody to run them.
Good point.
Hey, you mentioned moonshine. Something popped up on the Jack Daniels Facebook page. Have you ever heard of a tree fungus called whiskey fungus?
Mm-mm.
They were talking about it and all. That's how revenuers in the 20s and 30s were finding the moonshine cells. They would go out and look for this black fungus growing off the side of trees. It's not harmful to people. It just feeds off that yeasty smell that the mash gives off. And there's your 10-cent trivia for the evening, folks.
Here's another encounter story from the Navajo reservation. So my grandmother on my mother's side has always been very superstitious, for lack of a better word. She's not religious, but she does believe in a lot in the paranormal. Her mother was full-blooded Navajo, and her father was Irish. Either way, she'd never been anywhere east of Montana, and she grew up in Nevada. One year, when I was in grade school, we went to visit her. Most of the visit was pretty uneventful, typical boring old people stuff, except she kept her curtains drawn and shut at night, and would always peek out the window, and when someone asked what she was doing, she would simply reply, "The Ye Nautilus is watching me." This went on for nearly the entire visit until a few days before we were due to leave. My grandma and my then baby brother, he's 19 now, were in the front yard that evening, planting flowers, when all of a sudden my grandmother starts shouting my little brother's name for him to get away from that creature. It's not safe. Of course, being in Nevada, we all assumed that my brother had found a scorpion or a rattlesnake, so we all ran outside to find my grandmother clutching my little brother and shaking in terror against the side of the house. Standing in the yard was a large black Great Dane-sized dog. It was staring at my grandmother with an intensity I'd never seen before. It looked up at us, gave a little huff, and bounded off. I don't remember if it had moved unusually fast or not, but I do remember it had deep yellow eyes. When my mother asked my grandmother what happened, she kept repeating, "The Ye Nautilus has found me." She moved a couple of weeks later.
That's spooky.
Doc, you're cutting out pretty bad, brother.
I might lose y'all, man. The snowstorm's picking up and it's cutting into my satellite.
Well, if you fade out and can't come back, we'll know what happened. Thanks,
Man,
Sentinel. Thank you, brother. Appreciate the super chat, brother. Thank you very much. Here's another one from the Navajo Res. It says, my uncle and cousin saw a large deer on the side of the road. When they got closer to it, it hopped over the fence like a bipedal man. One time driving back from Gallup, my dad saw an old Navajo woman walking on the side of the road. And when he slowed to offer a ride, she took off into the plains quickly within human speed. Once when I was a kid, my family was at my aunt's house, which is in a rural, secluded area, and we were toyed with by a few entities. They would make animal noises, and when we looked in the direction from which the noises were coming, they would turn a flashlight on and off. The noises would come from all directions in increasingly shorter succession. Usually when I'm there on the reservation visiting, alone late at night, I'll feel the presence of evil and dread. Panic and paranoia will wash over me as sudden as it comes, it leaves. Well, we did lose Doc.
Yeah.
I better tell him if all else fails and he can't get through, do the Looney Tunes. Hold a dry erase board up.
Yeah.
Did you see the message from Inky earlier, DA? He said I put it up there for a little bit, but Sentinel's super chat took it off. He said he had something interesting to share.
Where's that? I have something very interesting to share. Yeah, shoot me an email at daroberts@daroberts.net. I'd love to hear it. Let's see. I was looking for another comment. Mrs. Chef Yoda says, hello. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. I did. Yeah, it was a good time. I got to spend a lot of time with family, which was really great. I hope everybody here had a good holiday as well. Inky says, look up the Great Meteor Construct, then look up the ancient map of Atlantis. Same exact pit. Yeah, the Pie-Rice map is a map of Antarctica without ice on it. Aussie Sue says, up in North Queensland, there's a black mountain where many people have disappeared over the years. It's also has a humming noise that comes from it. Any Aussie on here might know more. I'd ask Toom, but he's not with us tonight. Richie Evans says, question, why was it looking for her? Meaning the old woman from the reservation story. That doesn't say. Maybe she was just expecting it to come after her.
Either that or she was an elder and was trying to put a hit on her.
Maybe that's possible as well. Richard Cox says, I wonder if the practice of spirit magic is what draws other evils to reservations. It's possible. A lot of cryptid stories from reservations as well. Here's a short one from the reservation. It says, my uncle is of Mexican and Native American descent. This happened in the Mojave Desert in Southern California. He was driving around with his girlfriend late at night, and they saw something that looked like a huge black dog on the side of the road. He slowed down, and the dog began to cross the road. Instead of walking like a normal dog would, this thing moved like a toy rocking horse. I can only imagine it means like rock, rock, rock. Like it's just rocking back and forth on its feet. He said it stopped in the middle of the road and stared right at them, and its eyes had a red glow. My uncle is the most badass person I know, and it scared the hell out of him. Here's another pretty good one. You guys will get a kick out of this one. So this happened about 12 years ago. My family owns a farm in the heart of an Indian reservation. One winter, I was home for Christmas, taking care of the farm while my parents were away Christmas shopping. As I was home alone by myself, way late in the night, and I hear all our cows freaking out. I knew it had to be the wild dogs that are rampant in the area. So I throw on some boots, grab a shotgun, load it up, and head out to the field. This was a perfect scenario for a horror movie. It was cloudy, but there was a full moon, and it was breaking through the clouds just right to light up all the snow. I ran out in the middle of the field and just in time to see two dogs. They were standing up facing each other and fighting. I think perfect 2-for-1. So I pump a shell into the chamber of Mr. 12 gauge, and then it happened. The two dogs heard the rack. They both stopped, looked over at me, and ran away on their hind legs. Immediately I froze, and every ghost story I'd ever heard about the Skinwalkers and all their other native legends I grew up with flew through my mind. Keep in mind, I'm a white guy, and up until then, these were all just boogeyman stories the native kids tell to scare us. That night, they became very real to me.
You know, that sounds kind of like some of the dogman stories we've read in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So that just kind of lends credence to what we were talking about, you know, maybe some of these dogman sightings that we've read are not really truly dogman, that there
is some overlap there. A lot of skinwalkers are seen in and around burial mounds and have reportedly digging into graves, not only for stuff to use in their magic rite, but also to steal personal items that belong to the corpses. Dogmen are often reported in and around cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
Richie Harris says, could the Banshees in the Appalachians be a form of Skinwalker? I don't think so. Banshees are very different. The old Celtic myth of the old Celtic legends of the Banshees. Banshees tend to attach themselves to one family in particular. And if you heard the Banshee call, it was an omen of death. So they're very different from the Skinwalker legends. In fact, we should probably do a show on Banshees because they're pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But the Banshees were generally a death omen. Which is very different from the Skinwalker stories.
So,
go ahead.
You talked about the corn dust or corn pollen keeping them out. So, I guess we could surmise that any of the dogman stories that we talked about with them going into the cornfields, those were probably true dogmen.
Probably.
If it was a Skinwalker and that type of corn product repels them, I would think they probably wouldn't be able to go, because didn't the one you saw cross from one cornfield to the other, right?
Right.
One out there at the ranch.
And it crossed about a 40-yard stretch of wide open air. The road we were driving on ran between two cornfields, and it crossed from right to left in front of us. It was the back of this thing was easily higher than the hood of my SUV. It was moving on all fours, but it maintained eye contact with us the entire time it was moving across the road, which is very typical predator behavior. But the weird thing is it felt like it was staring directly at me in particular, like a contest of wills. I'd taken my foot completely off the gas and was just coasting as it was crossing the road. And the eye shine, the flare from its eyes started out green and grew more like white as it got farther out, but it was extremely bright. So bright I couldn't see any of the facial features. All I could see was the eye shine. But it was really, really freaking creepy. Even my wife to this day is like, I don't know what the hell that was, but it scared me.
Yeah.
Inky says there's a map of Antarctica, I believe, found in the 13th century that shows the Antarctica without ice on it. The map was found in a cave and much older. That's the Pie Rice map. Very interesting story on the Pie Rice map. We should talk about that sometime as well. There's a lot of legends around that. And in fact, when the U.S. Navy did sonar soundings of the ice in Australia, they thought the Pie Rice map was wrong, but then they found out their sonar soundings were incorrect. And when they double checked them, it turned out the Pie Rice map had been correct all along.
I'll be right back, gentlemen.
All right. Richard Cox says the term boogers and haints are used to describe a wide variety of unexplained things in Appalachia. Around here, boogers, wood boogers in particular, was one of the terms that the old timers used for Bigfoot creatures. Eric Saab says, oops. Eric Saab says there's a case that happened to a guy on the outskirts of Sydney, Australia, where he was harassed for years by a werewolf in his house. He moved several times and the creature did follow him. It kept getting into his house and entering his room and just growled at him. That, to me, that sounds more like something spiritual attached to him, possibly even a skinwalker. If it'd been a dog man or a werewolf type creature and it got into his house, it probably would have ate him.
Yeah.
That's a good question. That is a really good question. Robbie, you want to jump on that one?
Well, I think we've kind of sort of started answering some of that stuff along the way. I mean, it's been kind of a recurring theme that, dogmen, we believe anyway, that dogmen are just animals. But Skinwalker is not an animal. It's something that is not animal, not human anymore, I guess would be a better way to describe that. But I would think if you saw something and you looked at it and it was just one of those things that, I guess the feeling it would give you would be the best way. I mean, you're going to be scared if you see a dog man, but from what I've heard William say, if you look at a skinwalker, you're going to know it because it's just pure evil. And I think
skinwalkers can change forms, where dogmen, I think, are just dogmen all the time.
But I think we've hit on that with some of the encounters we've talked or read about. Some people will describe the dogman, oh, it was this and it was this, and but we've had those encounters where they looked at it and said, hound of hell, demon,
demonic, hellish.
I think you're going to know if you're looking at a skinwalker versus looking at a dogman. That's my personal opinion is if these things are truly as evil as they're described, you're going to know that you're not looking at just an animal.
Yeah, you're looking at something completely unnatural.
Yeah.
Chris M had a good question. She says, Banshees cultural in any way? Lots of the people that settled Appalachia were from Ireland and Scotland, where these stories originate. It's funny you bring that up, because if you look at the mountain ranges of Appalachia, and then the mountain ranges that run through Ireland and Scotland, before continental drift, when it was all one supercontinent, Pangea, that was one mountain range. So to me, anything mystical or magical that would be attached to the mountains of Scotland and Ireland would also exist in Appalachia, because at one point they were one mountain range. Northwoods. Sharon Guy says, my grandmother would tell us as kids, don't go into the cornfields at night because the wild women would go eat you. And I wish I would have paid more attention to her and asked questions. A lot of those old stories just kind of died out as people stopped really paying attention to, as I used to call them, old wives' tales or old family stories like that. But a lot of those stories, I think, are very relevant to some of the stuff people are seeing today.
I think Eric's got that. I think that's kind of where I was going with that. If it's a predator, like the video that you and I were talking about that I shared with you about the mountain lion stalking the guy, that was pure predatory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But what we're talking about here is something that is pure evil, that just isn't stalking you for predatory means because it thinks you're food or something like that, but is literally means you harm or means your soul harm. I just feel like you're going to know that.
Yeah, I agree. Eric Saab, has everyone heard about the hide behind? Yeah, we actually talked about that on one show back when Naoma was still coming on with us. And the hide behind, to me, kind of sounds like Bigfoot behavior, what they refer to as tree peeking. The hide behind is something that they described long before anybody ever heard the term Bigfoot or the term was created, and they didn't know what to call creatures like that. But when you hear about the behavior of the hide behind, it sounds very much like tree peeking of a Bigfoot. Inky says the word lycanthrope has been used throughout recorded history. That's true.
Comes back from King Lycan.
Lycian.
Or how you potato, but same guy.
Yeah.
Who tried to trick Zeus.
Right. And eating his own son.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman Meow says, my grandma wouldn't let us go into the woods because she saw something huge and dark that growled at her. She would never elaborate either. You always felt watched in those woods. May have had cryptid in those woods. He says over in the Ozark foothills around Poplar Bluff. Well, that's some pretty creepy woods down in that area. Poplar Bluff has got some weird stories. I've heard a couple of Bigfoot encounters from hunters down in that area. So that's a good area. If you know any public land or parks in that area, it's a good place to go squatching if you're in the Missouri area. Also, if you take the northernmost trails out of Busick State Park, or lots of places in the Mark Twain, there just about anywhere you want to go in the Mark Twain. There's you're gonna you see something weird or hear something. Let me see if I got any other shorter encounters I could read. Already read that one. That one's really long.
All right, Goldilocks.
That's a good one for you, DA. Mr. Cox had it right. If you mix the Scots, Irish, and Cherokee with a little whiskey, they can conjure up anything. That's the truth.
Probably not wrong. Eric Testament says the more you're away from the city, seems to be more activity. Now, there are a lot of places here in Missouri. There's a place not far from me, maybe an hour drive, maybe less, up on the north part of the Niangua River called Moon Valley, where we've recorded some weird shit. And I used to camp down there before there was a campground down there that you could camp on and even rent canoes, but they shut it down 25 years ago, and now it's private land, and it's marked as no trespassing. You can't get back in there, which is really too bad because there was a bluff at the far end of the valley where there were caves that we went into several times, and we'd find Native American artifacts in that area. I used to find arrowheads in the riverbed walking along the Niangua there in Moon Valley all the time. My wife and I went down there, I want to say first part of October. And there's a low water concrete bridge that crosses the Niangua, and there was no traffic down there. I mean, it is in the middle of nowhere, and it was right at dusk, and we just pulled into the middle of the bridge and rolled our windows down and listened. And it's just a kind of a really lonely, creepy place. I had some weird stuff happen to me down there when I was a teenager. But if any of you guys are on the Patreon and have read the short story that I wrote, there's a short story set in Moon Valley, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head.
That's the one with they make the stand on the bridge.
Yeah, the deputies, they made the stand right on that bridge.
Yeah, that's very, very good story. Very good short story.
I'll tell you where the name of it right quick. Give me just a second. Got to look it up.
That's the one
it's called Wrath of the Dog Man.
Yep, that's the one you and I talked about possibly making a series out of. I told you I thought you had the makings of a good series out of that.
Yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to turn that into the series or add those characters to the Lakeview Man.
I think either way you go with that you got something with that.
I like those two characters. I really do.
Yeah, that you hum a few more bars. That's why I said you just make you a set of short stories for Amanda to build herself her personal monster hunting
little
team.
task force. Eric Testament says, I live close to the Niangua River. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah, the Niangua's got a rich history of weird stuff. I mean, that was all Osage land. Dating back to long before there were European settlers in the area. That whole area was just a really creepy place. Moon Valley is just north. I want to say northwest of Bennett Springs State Park. It's not on. You're not going to find it on the map. You kind of got to know where it's at. Inky says, have y'all heard the Euphrates River is almost dried out? The apocalypse is supposed to start up when it's dried up. It's supposed to be an angel underneath in a prison. There are a lot of rivers that are drying up. The Mississippi, for one.
Yeah.
They found several Civil War shipwrecks that they thought were just lost to time. Near Memphis, they found no, it was near New Orleans. They found a ferry boat that used to take people back and forth across Lake Pontchartrain, and they said it broke loose from its mooring in a severe thunderstorm, and they never knew what happened to it. They found it within 100 yards of the dock where the dock was that it had broke from. I would have to look more into that. What's supposedly imprisoned beneath the Euphrates. That's not something I know a whole lot about.
That sounds right from different things I've read. That does sound right. Now that is brought up.
That they're probably talking about one of the things that's loosed when the seven seals, or one of the seven seals is broken.
Yeah. Little Patty says, I grew up in Logan and Boone County line in West Virginia. That's where my mama would tell me not to go past the first plateau on our mountain because the big hairy boogeyman would come get me. The old timers had lots of names for these Bigfoot type creatures.
Well, and to tie this into what we started with, we've talked about it before. We said you're always hearing different kinds of encounters. Like you hear some people who've had just like these really peaceful encounters with Bigfoot, and you hear people that have, maybe scary encounters with Dogman, but not like terrifying. And then you hear people who have encounters with Bigfoot where they felt like they were just lucky to get out of there alive. Some people talk about the hellish or the demonic Dogman. All these things that you see. I would love to be able to have some kind of program that would take all these sightings, filter through all of them, and see what the ratio of terrifying,
looking for certain keywords,
versus the ones that were just like normal, and then start looking at all those and seeing what like you said, the keywords match it. Maybe all those are not Bigfoot or Dogman or any of that kind of stuff at all. Maybe those are all Skinwalkers or demonic.
Skinwalker can take any form of any animal, then there's no reason why it couldn't take the shape of a Dogman or a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Richard Cox says the Amicalola River runs through the bottom of the Appalachian Trail, and the Cherokee named one section the Devil's Elbow. If you look at old maps, like old plat maps, like old county maps, I've got several from counties here in Missouri. There are tons of places. Like down in Arkansas, there's Devil's Den State Park. Up near Hahatonka, there's the Devil's Kitchen. I know lots of places that are called like Wild Man Creek and stuff like that. There's got to be a reason these places were named stuff like that. Now, you can't imagine, the first guy that named a place like Devil's Springs or something like that walked up and go, this place is beautiful. It's got a fresh spring water coming out of the mountainside. Let's call it Devil's Springs. Why would they name it something like that? There's got to be a reason.
Well, there's a road in Pickens County where I live called Bigfoot Pond Road. Why would you just name it something like that?
Exactly. There's got to be a reason. Sharon Guy says the Mississippi River dried up here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana this summer, and you could see the bottom in places. That's getting low. Richard Cox says, by the way, that was where I had my first Bigfoot encounter 50 years ago. That's awesome, man. Adam Roberts, my nephew, he lives up in New England now. He says in Hanover, Massachusetts, we still have Hell Swamp. Northwood says this week marked 3 years since my encounter. I still don't know exactly what I saw, but there's no way it was a human or a bear. Yeah, and that's the thing. When people are having these encounters, and so many people are quick to dismiss them. Oh, you just saw a bear. You misidentified it. No, there's no way. I know what a bear looks like. I have seen them my whole life. I know what wolves look like. I know what coyotes look like. I know what natural animals look like. But when you describe seeing something that is completely outside your wheelhouse, and people are just dismissive and say, "Oh, you just saw a bear." They weren't there. They didn't see it. It's easy for somebody to armchair quarterback your sighting and say, oh, you just saw this, you just saw that. But you get that same person and they have their first encounter sighting, it changes everything. People that denied the existence of these creatures will become absolutely terrified. One of two things happens. They either deny it ever happened to them and won't refuse to talk about it, or they become a diehard believer and delve into the subject as much as they can.
Yep. And like we've said it before, there are people who have seen it or seen things like us and know, and then there are those who haven't and are probably either going to have an encounter or they're never going to go anywhere where they're ever going to have an encounter, and they're not going to open their mind and be perceptive.
Exactly. We're already 2 hours into the show. Holy crap. I need to make a quick announcement real quick. Folks, don't forget we are now a Scallywag Tactical affiliate. Use discount code DA Roberts at checkout to get 10% off your order. You can use the link below or simply go to scallywagtactical.com and at checkout use the discount code DA Roberts 10. Amazing knives. I think all three of us here have some from Scallywag blades, and they are fantastic knives. You will absolutely love those blades. And some of them are on sale for as little as $12. So
It works
definitely
in the
go there and check them out. The blemishes are about gone. There's still a few left, but not many.
I was gonna say your link works in that too.
Yes, it does. So make sure you swing by Scallywag Tactical. Tell them you were sent by the folks over at DAX Machina. Let them know we sent you, and don't forget to use the discount code DA Roberts 10 for 10% off your order. And we are also a Dark Angel Medical affiliate. So if you want to go to darkangelmedical.com or use the link right there, you can go over to Dark Angel Medical, get some of the best medical kits in the business. Carried one throughout the big chunk of my law enforcement career, and I can't imagine trusting my life to any other kit. And if you use the discount code Cryptid25, you'll get 25% off your order. It's the biggest discount Scallywag Dark Angel offers. So again, use discount code Cryptid25 at checkout to get 25% off your order. They have fantastic products. Oops, I'm going to leave that up. Get back over to the comments.
DA, have you seen the new razor Skyway come out with?
Oh yeah, I want one. Those are so nice.
That's just a hunk of steel.
Mm-hmm. I want the two new folders they put out too. I really like folding knives. They got two
That's what I'm
brand new
talking about.
folders. Yeah, the razor folder. Oh,
yeah.
Dude, I want one of those so bad.
There was a few thrown in the blim sale, but I just couldn't get justified even at the blim price.
Yeah.
That's just a hunk of freaking steel.
Yeah, it is. That thing is a massive knife. I definitely want to add that to my daily carry regimen.
All you gotta do is put about a foot of paracord on it for a leash, and I'll just swing it and clock somebody upside the head. You ain't gotta even cut them. You ain't got a damn cut them. Just whack them upside the head with it.
Yeah. Again, they're just huge chunks of steel, and it's high quality steel goes into the process of those knives. Robbie, you got your dew claw handy? As little as that knife is, it's still got a tremendous amount of heft in your hand. It's not a super big knife, but it is easily a 1/4 inch thick, maybe even thicker. Hardened steel, holds an edge like nobody's business. Straight out of the box, as sharp as hell. Just a fantastic knife. And that, if you do a lot of camping or hunting or fishing, that would be a great little knife to keep on you, because it's heavy enough and holds its edge well enough. You can use it for just about anything, and it'll hold its edge.
Kydex holster.
Very nice knife.
Well, hell, even the folders. Do you have an Orca?
Yeah, I've got the Orca right here.
No, that's the Wahoo.
Oh, that's the Wahoo. Got
the Orca's the Orca's got the little serrated in it.
Yep, that's the
Yeah. Even the pocket knives, as cheap as they are, they're still a damn solid
Oh, yeah.
pocket knife.
Northwood says, if I had the money, I'd get a couple of Gil Hibben blades. I've got some Gil Hibben knives. Gil makes fantastic blades. I've met the guy, super nice guy. He used to have a workshop down in Springdale, Arkansas, and I drove down to his shop, bought a couple of knives. Met the man while I was there. Super nice guy. But pound for pound, I'll put one of those scallywags up against any of his blades.
And
They're
let me
just
guess.
that good.
While Gil was in there making his knife, he was in there smoking a cigar.
Yeah, I didn't see him smoking a cigar. How
Really?
I met him it was kind of funny. I was looking at blades with a buddy of mine. We took our motorcycles down there, and I'm looking at knives, and there's a guy in the shop, and he was just wearing coveralls, and he was dirty and grimy, and like he'd just come out of a mechanic shop. And wasn't paying any too much attention to him. And I'm like, I wonder how good these are. And I was looking at some of the Hibben throwers, like Steven Seagal used on the movie with he was a Navy SEAL.
Under Siege.
Under Siege. That was a Hibben thrower he used. I was looking at those. I said, I wonder how good these are. I've never had one. The guy with the coveralls goes, "Oh, you'd really like those. Those are good quality knives." And he started talking about the steel and everything. I'm like, "How do you know so much about these knives?" And he goes, "I'm Gil Hibben. I made them." So I sat there and talked knives with him for a little bit. Super nice guy.
Yeah.
What are they called? Gil? How do you spell that last?
His name is Gil Hibben. Gilhibben. He's a premier knife maker. He made most of the knives that Sylvester Stallone used in the Rambo series. He's just a fantastic knife maker.
If you saw a knife in a movie in the 80s, chances are Gil Hibben
made it. Inky says, I've heard stories where witnesses won't acknowledge what they saw, even around other witnesses. Fred Roll from Alaska, his own family members won't talk about what happened when they were attacked in that cabin.
Well, Fred talks about it, but you can tell he really doesn't like talking about it.
Yeah, it makes Fred nervous. Pork and Mean says, DA, watch the Dogman footage you have. Pretty interesting. And howdy, Sugar Britches. Well, thank you. I'm glad you watched it. And again, I'm not presenting that as any kind of smoking gun. I'm not claiming it's the Dogman equivalent of the Patterson Gimlin film. We just caught something on camera that we had no idea was there. In fact, it was a year and a half later before anybody even spotted movement in that video. So, we had no idea that whatever was back there. Doa Thorne says, "Hey y'all, I'm at work, but I hadn't been able to participate, but I'm here listening. Hey, welcome to the channel, man. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the DAX Machina Nation, man." Richie Harris says, "I have an original Rambo collectible." If you go to, I want to say it's Bud K that sells a lot of the Hibben knives.
Bud K and Smoky Mountain Knife Works.
Mm-hmm. And I think Hibben's got his own website as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great knives. But again, pound for pound, I'll put a scallywag blade up against any of those. Just absolutely unbelievable. And if you want to talk the big Rambo knives, I will put this. This is the gunner's mate. I will put this up against any of them. This is probably, as far as knives go, this is the toughest blade I have ever owned. It's full tang. Look how thick that son of a gun is. It's sharp as hell, and I do everything with this. I mean, I've hacked up, kindling for a fire with it. This thing just takes a beating and holds an edge like nothing else I've ever owned. That is one hell of a knife.
That would be my next scallywag purchase.
Robbie, go ahead and find you one in the Bloom sale.
They still expensive even in the Blim. I checked on it, but they only have like one and it's already gone. So.
Inky was asking where that footage is. Let me I will grab that video real quick. And I'm going to share the link in the chat. This is I'm posting the link to the Joe Bald breakdown video. My buddy Josh Jones put this together for me. This is a compilation of not only the original video, but the footage that they slowed down and enhanced, plus the stills they isolated. Guys, check that out. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Again, I make no claim that this is a smoking gun Dogman video. It is not going to be the next Dogman, the next Patterson Gimlin footage. We caught something weird on camera, and we don't know what it was. And when we went back to the spot and measured it, it had to have been about 9.5 feet off the ground where that head comes out.
Now, Robbie, you mentioned Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Have you ever been to the facility in Sevierville?
Many times, yes.
That place is danger zone for a guy.
Yeah,
I would have.
I could go
I've
broke
been
next
there
door real quick.
Yeah, I've been there once, and I was like, the time I got up to the checkout, I was like, holy crap! I've spent how much?
I went 3 times in one trip down there.
Trying to max your credit card out, won't you?
Yeah.
If I went that crazy at a knife store, my wife would kill me.
Well, it's so easy to do, though, Doug. They don't let you walk around with it. They're just like, all right, you're at the case dealer or the Gerber. They've got it divided up into sections and all. It's like, all right, I want this Gerber knife. They give you like a little golf clip, a little like golf cart. A little like putt golf scorecard, and they write down what it is, your name, and they'll put it up front. So then you've got to keep a run tally in your head how much each knife is you're putting on your ticket.
Yeah. Lene says, DA, you ought to be whooped for using that knife to chop kindling. I was kind of putting it through its paces to see what it would do. Normally, when I chop kindling, I use this. This is also from Scallywag Tactical. It's called the boarding axe. It's green, so my green screen is chroma keying it out, but you can also see how thick this thing is too. I normally use this for kindling, but I just wanted to put that gunner's mate through its paces to see what it could do, and it held its edge through all of it. I mean, I was pretty rough with it. Robert Miller says, my experience of sighting of a creature, it happens so fast you try to take it all in, and in your mind you're going, what the fuck was that? And then it was gone. Exactly. That was what happened when I saw what I saw in LBL. I had my phone up. I had my phone in my hand with the camera app up. My full intention was to catch something on video if I saw something. But when I saw it, my brain just went into vapor mode. And all I could think of was hit Nick in the shoulder and point it out. I didn't once think of filming it until it was long gone. I think Doyle Thorne got your knife there, Robbie.
Yeah, I was just reading that. It's all right. Yeah. First come, first serve. Hope you enjoy it. Because
we'll see what happens. I mean,
It's
we're
like I said-
affiliates with Scallywag now, so maybe something nice will come in our stockings this year.
my boy Pitbull took care of me for Christmas, so
There you go. Dude, we are rapidly coming up on the 2.5 hour mark. Unfortunately, Doc had to bow out because of the weather. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. But folks, on what we've kind of bound in, over the chat, is the Skinwalkers are very, very dangerous. They're as evil gets, and there's a lot of overlap into other creatures. Some of these Dogman stories very well could have been a Skinwalker. But Skinwalkers are not limited to a wolf shape or a coyote shape. They can literally take on the form of anything, even somebody you know. If you think you've encountered a Skinwalker, say your prayers. If nothing else, get a hold of a Native American shaman. Call your priest. Talk to somebody, but defend yourself. Prepare yourself, because these things are as evil as it gets. Lurkslot says if you can't baton kindling, the knife ain't worth having for a camp utility knife. The gunner's mate is a great utility knife. That knife can take a beating like no other.
And I imagine you could chop a tree down with this thing as heavy as it is.
I imagine you could. I've used mine like on like to whittle chips off of branches to make kindling with, not to like chop with it, but to like whittle pieces off of a branch to make easy kindling. Sorry, I'm answering somebody. Um, yeah, Meg's absolutely correct. Correct. I want to say big thanks to all the moderators. Moderators did a great job tonight. Glad you guys are here. Thank each and every one of you for your hard work. Folks, I am so glad that each and every one of you guys out there has joined us. We've had a great crowd tonight, a lot of great comments coming from the group. At one point, we had like 163 people watching, which is just absolutely fantastic. Sean Hutchinson says, good morning from Sean in the UK. It's 4 a.m., but keep up the good work. Thank you, Sean. Appreciating that. Wendy Guizdala says, DA, are you getting many encounters of Bigfoot or Dogman from mid to northern Michigan? I know just the guy to ask about that. Check back with us next week, and I'll see if I can round a few up. I know there's quite a few sightings in the Upper Peninsula alone, but the Michigan Dogman sightings come in almost daily. People are still seeing that pretty commonly, and as well as the Beast of Bray Road, people are still seeing it as well. So up there in Minnesota, Wisconsin area, there's still a lot of sightings coming out. Aussie Sue says, great show, DA and panel. Good night, everybody. Hey, thank you for being here.
Not awesome.
Again, check out the folks over at Scallywag Tactical. If you like their knives, and I know you will because they're just absolutely awesome blades, use the discount code DARoberts10 at checkout for 10% off your order. And if you need a med kit, I highly recommend Dark Angel Medical. Head over to darkangelmedical.com and use the discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. Hope you guys will check them out, send them some love, show them some love, and support those two great companies because they're veteran owned. Great stuff. Just I'm a proud supporter of veterans in every way I can. Richie Evans says, use your hair or lint to start a fire. I do that all the time. I'll collect dryer lint in Ziploc bags and keep it in my rucksack. Lene Perkins says, may God bless and keep you all safe until we meet again. Thank you, ma'am. You too. And again, keep Miss Lene in your prayers for her continued improvement of her health, and keep Tombstone and his family. They've got kind of a family issue going on. Again, not my place to say, but keep those folks in your prayers. This coming Friday, Saturday, hopefully we'll have everybody back in the house and Anthony won't be stuck in traffic at the airport. Appreciate you guys, each and every one. We've had a wonderful time. General, thanks for jumping in with us, man. Appreciate it. Robbie, thank you, brother. Hey, when's your next episode coming out?
I'm going actually as soon as we get off tonight, I'm gonna work on. I've got thumbnails for most of them. Taylor's got those done for me, so I'm probably gonna try to release one or two tonight, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe tomorrow ish. I just got to check and see how many he's got how many Tyler got me in the pipe ready to go.
Where can they find those episodes? I know you're on Spreaker.
Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, believe it's on Amazon. We're also on YouTube. It's What's Really Out There. We're not live on that show like we are here. We're pre-recorded. But we delve in. Show's a little bit shorter than what we do here, but we jump into pretty much everything, local stuff around the Southeast, some stuff we get into from other countries. Just anything cryptid, supernatural, paranormal. We talk about a little bit of everything. So, yeah, I think it's pretty.
Did you share the link in the chat?
Not in the chat. Meg, if you can do that, I can't. I don't know how to share it in the chat. All I know how to do is put it on the ticker on the bottom. Tombstone usually shares it in the chat, but
yeah. Again, hopefully we'll have Tombstone back on Saturday. But again, folks, just keep him and his family in your prayers, and keep Miss Lene in your prayers because we want her to continue to get healthier and and we love having her around, and she's such a wonderful person and a big part of the moderator group and the family here at DAX Machina. Yeah, Meg, yeah, we will definitely have a show on Saturday. Topic yet to be announced. We're kind of looking at a few options for the final show of 2022. So we have to look for that show to pop up in the next day or two. Again, thank you, folks. Thank you guys for spending your Wednesday evening with us. We had a wonderful time. I've said it before. I'll say it again. We don't have fans. We have friends. And thank each and every one of you for being part of the family here at DAX Machina. Hashtag DAX Machination. You guys are the nation, and we are so happy that you spend time with us. Had a great crowd tonight. A lot of great answers. A lot of great questions in the chat. Just great comments from you folks, and appreciate each and every one of you guys very, very much. And again, check out Scallywag Tactical. Use discount code DARoberts10 for at your checkout for 10% off. And Dark Angel Medical, use code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. And make sure you let them know we sent you. So thank you guys for joining us. We had a wonderful time. We look forward to having you guys join us again on Saturday night. And we are so thankful for each and every one of you for making this show what it is. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful evening. And we will see you guys on Saturday night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.